On this episode of Behind the Numbers, we have a good friend, Patrick Heffron, CFO at Pong Studios. Patrick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Russ.
I feel like you have a very impressive, pedigree, especially within the SaaS ecosystem here in Toronto. You've helped fundraise in scaling SaaS companies. You've helped with exits and integration after acquisitions. And you're also a facilitator within the Mars Discovery District, teaching entrepreneurs on various financial concepts. So I'm definitely excited to talk to you today a little bit about your experience around fundraising activities. So I want to start off by asking you, when is the decision made by an executive team to go out and raise capital?
In an ideal world, I'd say that decision's made because they see a significant opportunity ahead of them and they have evidence that they're getting traction. And so now it's about, do we spend more money on usually sales and marketing to go capture the market sooner than later and in a bigger scale before other entrants come. In a lot of situations, it's usually just because they're running out of money, right? To be practical, right? And unfortunately, in those situations, it's usually very early for those companies because what it means is they haven't really proven their economic viability of their model yet, right? They're still trying to find, in a lot of cases, product market fit. And they aren't necessarily at the stage of looking to raise money to scale.
So Patrick, the other question I have for you is, what is the process for raising capital?
So usually the best starting point anyhow is start preparing due diligence. Anybody who's ever been involved in a sales process knows the old saying that time is the enemy of the sale, right? And when you've got an interested investor, the last thing you want to do is move slow. You want to capture their enthusiasm and reflect the fact that you're ready and you're prepared, just in general as a company, right? So the best way to do that is basically start pulling together your data room and everything that you can anticipate. And it's usually fairly standard material that you can do it. And in some cases, I've known companies that are anticipating this almost from the start, right? So they're actually just even building their file structure in the company. The other one that can usually start even before you're done that is networking, right? Usually by the CEO, quite frankly. The fact is that the CEO really has to be the one to lead the process. CFO can plant some seeds, have some of the introductory calls for sure, right? But ultimately an investor is looking to the CEO and they want to know that they are in charge and running the process, right? And the reality is, there's in all likelihood nobody more heavily invested in the company than the CEO and the founder. So the networking aspect is really important because it's all about finding the right fit with the investor, right? Whether it be fit of industry, right? That the investors are looking, and interested in the solution that you and the market that you're going after, whether it be geographic fit, that they're interested in Toronto, in this market. They're not only focused on US firms or only focused on West Coast, for example. That's part of it. Size and stage is a really key part of fit in the sense that you may be looking to raise, for, growth, right? But they're, more like a later stage or an earlier stage, right? And looking to write different size checks as a result. So you want to make sure you have that right fit. And it does take a lot of time and effort from a networking perspective.
So then on that, Patrick, how does the management team determine, who's the right strategic fit with a investor?
The practical reality, unfortunately, is if someone's willing to write a check and invest in your company, that's probably a good sign that they're a fit for you, right? Unfortunately, a lot of times companies are in a situation of they need to raise the money, right? They're not in a situation of wanting to raise the money, they need to raise the money. So at that point, if you have an interested investor, you're going to be all over it. You don't really have the luxury of choice, right? But in an ideal world, right, I would say you want to evaluate the fit. So first of all, you've probably already found the right fit from the perspective of the components that I just ran through, right? Because they're interested, maybe you've even got a term sheet, right? That says you've probably got the right fit going into this. At that point, I think you want to make sure as a CEO or CFO that you're dealing heavily with the actual individual on the investor side that is going to be the person actively involved in your company, responsible for you and their portfolio going forward, because you're getting to know them, right? You don't want to find out that you've gone through the whole deal process, with person A, and then person B ends up being the person on your board and you don't know them at all, right? So you want to make sure that you're working with the right person up front, right? And then it's just getting to know them, right? Do you like the way they operate? You can ask questions. I think one of the key ones, although it may be difficult to get a genuine answer, is, what's the approach, right? I've worked with, some companies that we have on our board, and we get a variety of mix where some investors are, very involved in the operations of the business. It's what they're comfortable in, and they want to help at that level. Not a bad thing. They may have a lot of experience that they can share and help you out, right? And then contrast the other end of the spectrum, you have a board member who's there to, more high level, right? They want to just make sure that you've got the right processes. They're there to help you in introductions, spur some ideas, but they're not going to get involved and even actively ask questions around the operations of your business. And in reality, most people are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, right? But you just want to make sure that you understand going in, what you're looking at.
When you're getting the information ready for VCs, I've been told that, the first thing that the investors want to look at is the financial model. What type of metrics or data are these investors typically looking for from the CFO?
So first of all, I think you're right that, the almost exclusively the number one first comeback or follow up from a successful first pitch, or even an unsuccessful first pitch, is send us your financial model, send us your business model, whatever you want to call it, right? That can go two ways. One is they're genuinely interested, right? They want to dive in, peel the onion another layer, and start looking at it more closely to better understand the business. The other is maybe it wasn't a great pitch, but it's kind of a way of, more delicately saying, send us your financial model, and then they can respond back to you saying, we're not a fit, right? It's kind of a way of taking it outside the room. Sometimes investors are more straightforward in the room. Sometimes they're on the fence. Keep in mind that in that very first pitch, your goal is to get a second meeting, right? This is a teaser. You're not going into a lot of detail. And chances are it's focused exclusively around revenue, right? So then to your question of what are they looking for in the financial model, KPIs may or may not be something key at this stage. I would say the number one thing that most investors are looking for is to get an understanding of some version of price times quantity, right? How many things do you think you're going to sell at what price, right? And when do you think you're going to sell them, right? So, if your revenue number is simply in June, we expect to sell 30,000, and in July, we expect to sell 70,000, like dollars, like that doesn't really share much insight, right? And it also doesn't create much of a point for conversation. But if you drill down into that and you're like, okay, so you think you're going to sell 10,000 things at $3, that's your $30,000 of revenue. There's your price times quantity. Now you can have a conversation about, so tell me why do you think you're going to sell 10,000 things? And tell me why you think $3 is the right price, right? So now you're having a business conversation.
Patrick, I really appreciate you coming on today to discuss your experience with fundraising and working with within the VC community.
Thank you, Russell. Much appreciated.